Hello, today we will talk about social behavior and cognition. Social roles are expected behavior patterns associated with particular social position. So being a daughter, being a worker, being students. And those social roles help us to anticipate how others will behave. So for example, if we know that this person is the boss of other individuals, we might know how that person might behave compared to somebody who is not the boss. Psychology professor Zimbardo was very interested about these roles and roles expectations. His research was founded by the Navy and the Marine Corps as a potential investigation into the causes of conflict between military guards and prisoners. What he did was to recruit students, participants, so how you're participating in research credits at school. Those participants also were recruited in a similar manner. He recruited 24 male students for an approximate period of a week to 2 weeks of the experiment. What happened was he divided part of them to be the guards and part of them being the prisoners. And that's all he did. What happened was the participants adapted to the roles that they were assigned to them. And it was well beyond Zimbardo's expectations. The guards enforced authoritarian measures and ultimately subjected some of the prisoners to actual psychological torture. Many of the prisoners passively accepted psychological abuse and, at the request of the guards, readily harassed other prisoners who attempted to prevent it. The experiment even affected Zimbardo himself, who in his role as the superintendent of the supposed prison permitted the abuse to continue. Two of the prisoners quit the experiment early, and he actually stopped the entire experiment only after 6 days. Some of the potential reasons as to why that happened was the manner in which how they identified themselves. So whether their identification with their in-group members. So in-group member is a group member with which a person identifies, whereas an out-group member is a group member with which a person does not identify with. And it can be any type of group division. So nationality, ethnicity, age, education, religion, income, political values, gender, sexual orientation, etc. People usually will support in-group members compared to out-group members. Makes sense, right? You're more likely to support somebody who is the same age as you are, or potentially the same gender or the same religion. However, if the in-group member misbehaves, there's research found that there's a likelihood that the other in-group members will ostracize that misbehaving in-group member because of that. The reason why is because the in-group member is jeopardizing the reputation of the whole in-group. Another important component of social behavior are social norms. Social norms are widely accepted but often unspoken standard of conduct for appropriate behavior. Can you think of examples for social norms in our society? For example, personal space. Especially coming from Israel, for example, I noticed that in America there is a little more expectation for a little bit greater personal space around a person. So for that might be considered a social norm. Another social norm, when you're sitting in a classroom, potentially not to talk too loudly, use inside voices. There is another example that if there's a very littered place, so a place that have been graffitied or there's like trash on the ground or something like that, people are more likely to add to it by dropping their flyer or their garbage compared to a place that is littered less or not littered at all, because they see that there are social norms of like, all right, so this area is, it's littered, nobody cares, we'll conform to what is expected of us, to the social norms, for example. People around us not only can influence our behavior, but actually our thoughts about ourselves and others as well. Social cognition is the process of thinking about ourselves and others in a social context. And there are different examples of social cognition, so social comparison, attribution, and attitudes. Social comparison is making judgment about others through comparison with others. Sorry, about ourselves through comparison with others, usually those with similar backgrounds, abilities, and circumstances. So, comparing notes with other students after an exam, or saying, oh, how did you do? Seeing how others did, we're pretty much conducting social comparison. How about how we look? We potentially compare ourselves and our bodies to how celebrities look, how our classmates might look, how our friends, how the people we admire in the media. Attribution is the process of making inferences about the causes of one's own behavior and that of others. And there are two different types of causes that can lead to such an attribution: external versus internal. External causes might be that if, for example, we see an individual driving really, really fast on the road. They flew us by, potentially even cut us off, didn't signal when they got in front of us. If we might attribute to their personality two different elements. If we consider that the reason why they behave is an external cause, we might think that, okay, he's probably really in a rush to get to work. He's gonna miss a very important meeting. Maybe his wife is in the passenger seat and she is in labor, and he just wants to get her safely to the hospital. That's why he's speeding and being rude and putting potentially us in danger with his driving. We used an external cause to attribute his personality or his actions, right? However, alternatively, we can use internal causes. Oh, he's driving like that because he's a jerk. He is just very inconsiderable person. He doesn't care about anybody, and this is just his way of driving and not giving a damn. A very interesting element that we often use external and internal causes to justify our own behavior. For example, if you got a good grade on an exam, what you might think, oh, I'm really good at this material. I started really hard and I deserve this grade. Most likely than not, then it is the correct reason, right, why you got a good grade. So you're attributing your grade to internal causes. However, more likely than not, what would happen if you got a bad grade, or if you did not succeed in a sport event that you were competing in, you might blame somebody else. Oh, I woke up with a headache. I studied really bad. The teacher was really weird and didn't teach the material correctly. The person behind me was kicking the chair the whole time. The person by me was chewing a gum and was distracting me. The sun was in my face. You might come up with anything that might reason why you got the bad grade, and those will all be external causes. The fundamental attribution error is the tendency to attribute the behavior of others to internal causes. It is very common for us whenever we see somebody, for example, speeding on the road and being rude, is for us to attribute the behavior to internal causes. Oh, it's their personality. They're just really being a jerk. They're just very inconsiderate person. We usually don't consider potential external causes. Oh, he's acting like a jerk, or she's acting very rude or something like that. You might not be like, oh, she's just having a bad day. No, you will immediately attribute to her personality. Oh, she's probably just has, I don't know, a beachy personality or something like that. Rather than to the external causes, which can be actually the reason why. Attitudes are learned tendencies to respond to people, objects, or institutions in a positive or negative way. And we can acquire these attitudes about different people or elements by different ways. So we can have direct contact with somebody and we might have a positive or negative experience, so that we might think of their, like, have a more positive attitudes towards that person. Change conditioning, interaction with others, group memberships. Potentially we might not like a person because they are rooting for the sports team that we don't like. We might have negative attitude towards that person just based on that. And also chart varying and media can influence us as well. Cognitive dissonance theory posits that an uncomfortable clash between self-image, thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, or perceptions and one's behavior. Cognitive dissonance happens, for example, if you have certain attitudes or beliefs towards X, but you're behaving in an opposite manner. So for example, if you have attitudes towards eating healthy, you want to be more healthy, you believe that eating fast food is bad and you want to go work out every day, but then you just devoured a double cheeseburger with bacon with large fries and you haven't gone to the gym for a week. You might feel uncomfortable, right? There's kind of this feeling of like, okay, I kind of know and believe and have this attitude and perception about like being healthy and eating healthy, and yet I just ate that and didn't work out for a week. So that discomfort is the cognitive dissonance. And there are two ways to resolve that discomfort. Well, there's one way to resolve that discomfort, is to make the attitudes and behavior align. So people either need to change their beliefs and think, for example, well, I don't need to work out, right? It's not that healthy, and who needs to eat healthy? I love my fries, I love my burger, I'm gonna eat that. And continue behaving in the same way. Gonna feel good, right? Or you're gonna change your behavior. You're gonna stop eating the fast food, you're gonna start working out, and then your attitudes and thoughts are gonna align and the cognitive dissonance is gonna disappear. That's all I have for you for today. See you tomorrow.